It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
I'm A.P. Steadham from L.A., Lower Alabama. This is AP As We See It, a syndicated weekly one-hour show discussing the Southeastern Conference, college football, and the national scene, and other sports. Welcome to another edition of AP As We See It. And we'd like to direct our audience to our social media platforms and ways to watch and listen to the broadcast. Our AP As We See It on YouTube is the visual broadcast weekly. You can check that out at AP As We See It on YouTube, and also the Spotify version, which is the audio. That's on AP As We See It Spotify. And we have all the links to the show on our Facebook, Instagram, and X accounts, AP As We See It, and also my personal one, AP Steadham. So check all those social media platforms, not only for our weekly one-hour syndicated broadcast, but also for the events that we cover across the country. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Greer's Markets, 29 locations. They've been in business since 110 years this year, I believe it is. So that's quite a long time to be servicing the Gulf Coast, Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi and beyond. So you can check out all their weekly online ads. They have Lucy's Recipes online. She has a book out. You can purchase that at the store or online. And remember that you can purchase all your items for the basketball that's coming up, the SEC basketball, the NCAA tournament, all those weekends where you're going to spend watching the ball games with your family and friends. So family, friends, and basketball, and also football and the other sports. That's a winning tradition at Greer's. You can score the big savings on the fresh meats, the produce, and other items for your game day spreads. And remember, if you can't make it down to one of those 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, click on the groceries to go online, and they can deliver right to your home, your office, the venue of your choice. And remember, they're having the St. Patrick's Day specials these coming days, from March 11th to the 16th. And also you can check out the, like I say, the weekly specials online, the groceries to go to have those delivered. And for all the special occasions, the birthdays, the holidays, the anniversaries, and they have the coloring contest for the children. They're going to pick a winner on March 28th, which is a Saturday. So you can drop by one of the locations for the coloring items where you can try to win that contest, and that's always fun for the kids. So remember, check those weekly ads online and for the special holidays like St. Patrick's coming up, and they're going to have those available. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. So let's get on to the show. It's March Madness. Basketball is upon us. We have the women's tournament. We found that Texas was able to defeat South Carolina for the championship. Those were the two best teams in the conference, I feel, all season long. I actually saw Texas defeat South Carolina in the tournament in November in Las Vegas by 2 points. South Carolina was on the short end of that championship game, 78-61. So the Longhorns take their I think that's their first SEC league tournament championship that they won since they joined last year. But let's look at the women's basketball poll to start our show. Women's basketball, the Associated Press. This is week 18 that comes out on Monday, the 9th of March. UConn's in first place at 33-0. UCLA second, 31-1. Texas 31-3. South Carolina number 4, 31-3. LSU number 5, 27-5. Vanderbilt 27-4. Oklahoma 23-6. Kentucky 23-10. Number 19 is Ole Miss 23-11, and number 24 is Georgia 22-9, with Alabama receiving 47 votes. So that's 8 teams in the top 25 of the Associated Press on the women's side. And we're looking at the men's side, Associated Press men's basketball poll. Week 18, Duke, number 1, 29-2. Arizona, 29-2 in second place. Michigan, number 3, 29-2. Florida has moved up all the way to 4 at 25-6. Houston, number 5, 26-5. The other SEC teams, we have Alabama, number 15, 23-8. Arkansas, number 17, 23-8. Vanderbilt, number 22, 24-7. And Tennessee, 21-10 at 25, with Georgia receiving 10 votes and Missouri receiving a couple votes. So that's 5 teams in the top 25. So there's 5 teams on the men, 8 teams on the women. So they're well represented. The SEC men start their tournament this week, and as we spoke before, I think there's probably 10, 11 teams in the SEC that have a chance to make the tournament on the men's side. The women about the same, 10 teams. But our special guest this week is Richard Hendrix. He's the SEC basketball analyst for the men's and the women's. He's very knowledgeable, and like I said, he's a dual threat. He analyzes and is the analyst for the men's and the women's game as well. So he's going to be our guest in segment 2 and 3. We also like to, and he's going to give us his picks as far as the all SEC team, men's and women's. But we have the actual selections from the coaches. We're just going to give the first team on the men. They have 3 teams. We're just going to give the first. We have Darius A.P. Jr. out of Arkansas. He's a guard. Jacoby Gillespie, is a guard. He's from Tennessee. Thomas Howe from University of Florida. He's a forward. LeBaron Philon Jr. from Alabama. He's a guard. And Tyler Tanner, Vanderbilt. He's a guard. Notice that we have all guards and just one big person on the men's first all SEC first team. And the coach of the year, Todd Golden, University of Florida. And the player of the year is Darius A.P. Jr. out of Arkansas, the freshman. So that was kind of a surprise, I guess, to have a freshman be the player of the year in the Southeastern Conference on the men's side. And on the women's side, we have the All SEC basketball. They have 11 players on their first team. I'm not sure why the women have twice as many as the men, but that's the way they run their operation. The player of the year was Michaela Blakes of Vanderbilt. She's a guard. Liv McGill, a guard of Florida. Danny Carnegie of Georgia is a guard. Clara Strack, Kentucky's a center. Flo J. Johnson is from LSU. She's a guard. Michaela Williams, LSU. She's a guard. Cody McMahon. She's a forward from Ole Miss. Reagan Beers, center from Oklahoma. Joyce Edwards, forward from South Carolina. Madison Booker from Texas. She's a forward. And the coach of the year was Shea Ralph. And I think that was one of the best coaching jobs in the women's game in quite some time, to have Shea Ralph move that team from Vanderbilt to reach the top 10 and the top 5. So that's an exceptional accomplishment by Shea Ralph and her staff and the Vanderbilt program and their leadership. So, but that's the men's and the women's all SEC teams. And like I said, Richard Hendrix is going to be our guest in segment 2 and segment 3. We're going to discuss college basketball, some other topics, the transfer portal, the NIL. I always like to get my guest's opinion on those subject matters, especially somebody like Richard. He played at the University of Alabama. He was all SEC player, was there for 3 years, and played overseas for a number of seasons as well. But then we're going to delve into our last segment, segment 4. We have some interesting topics to discuss, and there's a rule change that affecting the transfer portal. I think it could help some coaches with their quarterback. And I'm going to put forward this proposal and see if you agree. And like I said, we have our social media platforms at AP Steadham and at AP As We See It. You can send us some suggestions, some observations, thoughts, some questions if you want. We'd always like to take questions from our audience. But I think there's a rule change in the transfer portal where you have just the one window, that it gives a head coach an opportunity to really manage the quarterback situation much better than in the past, because we know that there was a couple of transfer portal windows, one in the spring, particularly if the quarterback completed that time period or was able to have a conversation with the coach, they might leave. But now, where it's restricted, we see that the quarterback more than likely will stay unless they want to transfer and sit out. But I don't think that's going to happen. So we're going to discuss that option for a head coach. And the head coach is the leader, and they set the tone. They set the parameters for all the coaching staff, the players, and somebody who really has a command of their team, I think, can do a good job with managing that quarterback position with this implementation of only one transfer portal window. So we're going to discuss that in segment 4 in the show. And then we're going to discuss some of the things that were said at the Washington Summit last week. And we have our take on that. And I'm sure we'll have some disagreement, but we want to put forth our thoughts and observations about what was said in Washington. And remember now that unless something's codified, put into law, those things can be challenged in the court. And so could things that are legislated as well. But any type of executive order, that's not going to be enough, in my opinion, to change the college athletics, because that'll be challenged. And the fans, they'll continue to huff and puff about lawsuits. So I think that the time is ripe. It's been ripe for a long time to make some decisions on the college level, especially for college football, the sport that generates the most money and is causing the most angst among the fans, the coaches, the alumni. So we're going to discuss that in our segment 4, some ideas and options that we're going to put forth and propose. And we're just going to have a lot of fun with that subject. But anyway, we're going to be right back with our guest after these messages, Richard Hendrix, the SEC men's and women's basketball analyst for the SEC. So we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm A.P. Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, in a very special guest, friend of the show, Richard Hendrix, the SEC basketball analyst extraordinaire, does the men's and the women. It's a dual threat. We call him a dual threat. Hey, Richard, welcome to AP as we see it. So glad to have you again.
Glad to be here, AP. Thanks for having me.
We're here with March Madness, Richard. It's an exciting time of the year for all the basketball junkies, and I know you're one of them, but you're an all SEC player, but doubles all the time, led the league in rebounding, top 5 in scoring, all SEC player, drafted second round by the Golden State Warriors, played overseas, and your pro basketball career, I guess, 2008 to 21.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so you got a lot of experience. That must have been so much fun to go around the world and play basketball, Richard.
That was great. You know, I never thought that that's where my career would lead me. You know, after my rookie year, spending half the season with the Warriors, and then in the D League at the time, I spent the next 12 years abroad in 8 different countries, and you know, that was probably the biggest educational experience of my life. It's something that I really appreciate, and I had a great time. And athletically, it was a good career for me.
Yeah. And you saw all styles of play. Those European players, or the players across the ocean, as I say, they have skill, high level skill, because really they copy the best Americans, their shooting styles and techniques.
Well, you know, I think I was fortunate over my career, have a unique perspective that the game changed throughout my career. When I started, you know, your best players in the world were Shaquille O'Neal and Tim Duncan, and everyone was looking for those bigs to throw the ball into the block.
Yes.
At the end of my career, the trend has started to favor more having 5 guards and shooters on the outside like Steph Curry. So I was able to play in a style where the pace was slower and then the pace sped up at the end, and then the influence of the international game. So I was able to accumulate a wealth of knowledge on how to understand the game, and I hope I can deliver that to people when I speak about it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Richard, what makes an NCAA team ready for that tournament when you're trying to analyze who might advance? What are you looking for with each basketball team?
Well, I think from a team perspective, the most important thing that you want to have is to be healthy at this right time of the season. The season is a grind, and after a conference tournament, you want to make sure that you have a roster that is fresh to go out and compete. And the next biggest thing I think would have to be the continuity and momentum in which that you have. You're coming off the SEC tournament or your conference tournament. You want to be playing your best basketball. You want your players to be able to understand not only their particular game plan, but how to stop other teams, and then have the supreme level of confidence, because you're going to be playing in neutral sites, in new arenas with different backdrops and depth perception and tight rims and bouncy balls. So you have to be able to execute on the fly and mentally stay focused.
Mm-hmm. Richard, what about the characteristics of the talent that you would need at the positions? Your guards, your big people, your shooters, your rebounders, defenders.
Well, I would say this: styles make fights, and the most important thing for your advancement in tournaments will always be matchups. Now, I think in a perfect world, each coach would try to construct their roster in a way in which that they have some balance to be able to play slowly, to play up tempo, to shoot shots from the outside, to be able to post up and grind out games with a defensive style. But at the same time, if you're depending on your matchup in which the team that you play, you want to make sure that you have a roster that is able to compete against anything. You might play a team that's going to press for 40 minutes. You might have a team that's going to walk it up the court. And as far as your personnel is concerned, you want everyone to be dialed in to what they do best. If it's your guards that's going to have to lead one game, if your bigs that's going to have to lead another, you have to be able to bring your A game at this time of the year, because it's win or go home.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen coaching styles win ball games in a tournament? In other words, during the season, maybe you coach one way, maybe the tournament is a different way because it's one and out.
Well, absolutely. I think coaching definitely matters. When you get to the point of at this point of the season, little plays become magnified. And oftentimes coaches don't have a lot of time to make adjustments throughout the course of the game. But if it's one or two adjustments that you have to make, one or two decisions as far as substitution is concerned, or a switching defense, that's when the coach really earns their money. Can they come through and make the decision down the stretch or whenever it is to make one adjustment that can change the complexion of the game? And you will see also one important area in which this always comes in is at the end of games when teams get in foul mode and try to lengthen out the game to come back. How prepared is your team to handle the pressure of inbounding the basketball and advancing it up the court to try to close out games?
Mm-hmm. Richard, I remember when North Carolina State made that run many, many years ago, and Jim Valvano, he would always foul the other team. I think even when he was tied, he would foul the other team, put them on the line, to put the pressure on them. Is that a good scenario or of coaching move from your perspective?
Well, I think there's multiple options and perspectives you can use. I think it can be an effective tool depending on the personnel of your roster. Now, if you talk about how I've played for many years abroad, that was a very, very popular strategy to foul when you are up by 2, or maybe even foul if the game is tied, because you feel as if you want to be able to have the ball in your hands to control your own destiny. Now, I think also it depends on the complexion of the game. If you struggled all game long and you've been down and you scrapped and clawed your way to finally take the lead and you're up by 2, I think you might want to lean on your defense, because you've been able to get multiple stops in a row to that point. Lean on your defense to close out the game. But depending on how it goes, you might not want to let a team try to tie you up or beat you in the last moments, and you can have the ball to dictate the situation.
Mm-hmm. Richard, maybe 10 teams are projected from the SEC on the men's side, of approximately 10 teams. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes, and possibly they believe it could be 11, depending on what happens in next week's SEC tournament. So it's a good chance. Not 14 that the SEC had last year, but no. I think it's going to be 10, and they're thinking maybe 11 if some things happen to a couple of teams on the bubble.
Right. Richard, is that Auburn and anyone else on that?
I think Oklahoma is a team that's
Oklahoma
consideration. Porter Moser has done a really good job down the stretch, and they have put together a nice streak of wins and some good wins as far as their NCAA tournament resume is concerned. If they can get into this tournament and win a couple of games in the SEC tournament to improve their resume, then I think they can give themselves a chance from the outside to potentially be picked to be a part of the field.
Mm-hmm. What about on the women's side, Richard? It's about 10 as well. Is that right? About 10?
Yes. Well, the SEC, I think, from the beginning of the season has been the strongest conference all season long. Obviously, you talk about the top teams, Texas and South Carolina, and then Vanderbilt, that has been a top 5 seed team all season long, fighting for a 1 seed. I don't think they'll quite make that 1 line, but they might be the top 2 seed in the NCAA tournament to go along with LSU being a 2 or a 3 seed. So a lot of really good teams. It shows of the strength of the league, where Alabama is projected to be a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, and I believe they were a 9 seed in the SEC tournament. So the depth of this league has been tremendous, and it's been good ball all season long on the women's side.
Oh, yeah. Richard, you have 5 players from let's do the men's team. We get the last couple minutes here. We're going to do the women in the next segment. You have 5 players from the men's side that you thought were all conference?
Well, I definitely do agree with what the media members had. I think was interesting for me is that my preseason picks were pretty much close to it. As they had Darius Acuff was the SEC Player of the Year as a freshman at Arkansas. He was tremendous. I agree with Baron Philon. He had a really good season at Alabama. I think if a bounce goes another way or so, then I think he would have been in strong consideration for the SEC Player of the Year on the second place team. Jacoby Gillespie transferred in from Maryland, and he was a top-notch guard, scored and assisted well for Tennessee, was a good pick. And I think the one that was the most improved player that really earned his way onto this squad is Tyler Tanner at Vanderbilt. This kid makes that team go. He has an elite first step, and defensively, his skills are top-notch with his anticipation. And when he gets steals, he's able to get out and score on the other end. So that was a really good pick that I agreed with. But the sleeper that I don't know how many people had on this one, and I picked it, I'm proud to say I picked it on my preseason list, was for Thomas of Florida to be a first-team All-SEC player. And he showed that from the first game of the season all the way into the end. And I think he was a phenomenal player on a really good Florida team that has a lot of potential to win the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Coach of the Year. Who'd you have for Coach of the Year? We have about a minute remaining in this segment.
I have to go with Todd Golden. I think a lot of respect was going to go to Bucky McMillan. I think the way he was able to get out of the gate and be in first place for the first half of the season after coming in from Samford, he definitely deserved a lot of consideration. But Todd Golden replacing 3 guards that went to the NBA and retooling his team now to be a front line led team, I think is extremely impressive. They're going to be fighting for a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And if they get in it, I can see the Gators repeating because they're just that good.
Yeah, they've been pretty dominant, and I'm not sure if it means a lot for his team to win the SEC conference. I mean, some of these coaches, they like to go home. They really don't want to hang around and at the SEC tournament. But some coaches, they believe in winning every time they lace up the shoes. So, but I think he seems like a person who wants to win it. I think, to me, I don't know.
Well, that's the right mentality. Every game you step out there, you should want to win. And I think that's the job of the coach, to figure out a way to motivate and organize their team to be prepared to win every single game, every single tournament, and lead from the front. You don't want to have a mentality where you're trying to sneak anybody. Go out there and dominate and do your thing.
And we're going to be right back after these messages with our very special guest, Richard Hendrix, the SEC basketball men's and women's analyst extraordinaire. We'll be right back after these messages with another segment of AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm A.P. Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and our very special guest, Richard Hendrix, the SEC men's and women's basketball analyst extraordinaire. Richard, we had you give the men's side of the all-conference list. Let's look at the women's side. Who did you have for 5 players, let's say?
Well, I think it does start with Michaela Blakes. I think this was an outstanding pick for her to be the SEC Player of the Year. To me, she was dominant from ever since she stepped on campus in Nashville. And she hasn't gotten the respect that she deserves as one of the elite players. I think even should be in more consideration for National Player of the Year. But that was the correct pick that they had on that side. Now, the women's side had more than 5 players. Shea Ralph being the coach of the year was a tremendous pick. Madison Booker, last year's SEC player of the year, is another one's got to be in the top 5. Joyce Edwards, athletically, I mean, she is just a phenomenal player. She changes ends so well. She's physical, she's strong, she runs well, she understands the game, and she leads that South Carolina attack, more than deserving of a first-team All-SEC nod. And then I would say Cody McMahon from Ole Miss. That Ole Miss team battles, and they got that piece for her to come in, transferring in from Ohio State, and she's come in and she's been terrific, what she's able to do offensively to pair with Coach Yo's defensive style. So the Rebels, I think, will be a team to deal with in the NCAA tournament, as they battled in the SEC tournament, but not able to get to the championship round. And my last one is a player that I like particularly would be Clara Strack, if I picked 5 players.
Kentucky.
What she does at Kentucky,
Right.
offensively on the low block with her patented fadeaway jumper, beautiful post moves, passing out of the high post, and defensively rejecting shots. I think that she is definitely a star. And I would start with those 5, and that's with all respect to the rest of the players in the league. To name out a few would be Flau'jae Johnson and Michaela Williams at LSU, Reagan Beers at Oklahoma. But I would leave with those 5, McMahon, Strack, Michaela Blakes, and then Booker, and then Joyce Edwards.
Yeah, Booker of Texas and Edwards of South Carolina, of course. Which team on the men's side, Richard, do you think overachieved, and on the women's side? Which, you have a team or teams?
Overachieved. You know, I think on the men's side, it has to be Texas A&M. This is a team, if I'm not mistaken, was last to be in the SEC. And Bucky McMillan put together a roster of players that were able to come in and adapt to his style, and they executed very well. They did a good job of hitting off to a hot start, which allowed them some cushion in the second half of the conference slate. And now they're finding themselves solidly in the NCAA tournament in the first year for him in College Station. So it's got to be there with Texas A&M. On the women's side, I would have to give some love to Alabama and Christy Curry. You lose 3 players to the WNBA draft, Sarah Ashley Barker, Aaliyah Nye, and Zay Green. And here she is. She found herself in the top 25 for the majority of the season. Jessica Timmons and Carly Weathers played lights out. But more than anything, throughout the injuries that they had, particularly on that front line with Essence Cody and Naomi Jones, Christy Curry and Alabama Crimson Tide did an outstanding job of figuring out a way to get some significant wins, and they're back in the NCAA tournament after losing so much. So I thought they did a phenomenal job.
I thought Shea Ralph and the coaches for the women, I think that's what she's done at Vanderbilt is something to behold. She's probably up for the consideration for the national coach of the year, I would think, with leading that team back to the top 10. You know, they were very good years ago, and then they had a little drought. And I think what she done, she found some players across the country and really revived that program. Vanderbilt seems to be hot everywhere. Richard, the football and their men's basketball, their women's, their baseball team usually good. So Vanderbilt, Kendra Story, the former basketball player from North Alabama, played at Vanderbilt. She's done a marvelous job with leading that athletic program for sure.
Yeah, they've done a terrific job from Madison, Alabama. Done a really good job.
Right. Oh, for sure. Hey, Richard, I wanted to get on some other things here. The NCAA tournament. Is there any team nationally that you thinking is above and beyond everyone else at this point, or there's just a handful? There's a handful maybe in that realm.
Yeah, there's a handful of teams that I think have stand out, and you start with Duke and what John Shire was able to do. I think last year he had the most talented team with that Cooper Flagg-led team that fell up short of Houston in the Final Four. But this year, with Cam Boozer and Dame Sarr and that crew, I think they're playing really good basketball on a nice winning streak right now. They can guard defensively. They can win in so many different ways. And they seem to be motivated to get it done after last year, letting it slip through their hands. Michigan, as well as Arizona, are top-notch teams. They did have a little bit of a brief skid, Arizona in particular losing a couple of games in a row, but they have been able to collect themselves. It'll be important to see what they're going to do in their respective conference tournaments, because I think Duke will be able to run away with the ACC title if they can play their ball. And that momentum, it means a lot moving into the national into the NCAA tournament. And I would definitely throw Florida and UConn into that mix as well. UConn coming off a dropped one recently.
Yes, Marquette.
They definitely have the pedigree to be back, winning 2 in a row in the last few years. But I would put them a little bit behind Florida because what Todd Golden has going on looks to be pretty special.
And on the women's side, anybody nationally that catches a team I saw play was UCLA, Richard, out there in Las Vegas. They have the one loss, and it was out there in Las Vegas, I believe. So that caught my on the women's side.
Yeah, they're loaded, and I was able to check them out. They were dominant in their conference championship game. You have Lauren Betts down low. I mean, that type of size is something you cannot teach. And they seem to be a motivated team. One loss on the season, and not too many people get a chance to see them out on the West Coast. But the NCAA tournament, I think, for the women's side is going to be really good to see what UConn's all about. The number 1 seed projected, but I think UCLA will get some consideration to be that number 1 overall seed, just the way in the dominant fashion in which they played in maybe a little bit more of a tougher league as they play in the Big Ten and UConn being in the Big East. But, we know it's going to be a handful of teams: Texas, South Carolina, UConn, and UCLA, I think, have to be leading the way with their firepower.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Richard, in the last remaining 4 minutes, everybody has an opinion about transfer portal, NIL. What are some of your thoughts about the and then men's basketball? It must be after the season. They have the one window like the football. Is that what that is? And the men's and women's?
So I think that the difference with that is obviously that the sport carries over 2 semesters. So it's not impacted as much as football is when it comes to the calendar is concerned.
Right.
But to answer your question, my opinion about the transfer portal, I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist. I believe in the old school model of how college athletics was, where I do think that the educational aspect should remain at the forefront. That doesn't mean that I don't think players should not get compensated. I think they should be compensated. But if the motivation of your compensation is strictly based on transferring from one school to another, then I don't know how much that bodes well for a kid's future. It's hard for people to see it when you look at the coaches and administrators making a significant amount of money and they think that the players are not getting a piece of the pie. I'd argue for them to go and research and see what the numbers were prior to the recent years of the NIL and these collectives and whatnot. But more than anything, the legacy in which that you would have with one university is what can really help you out for a lifetime, as opposed to jumping around from team to team when you want to talk about how you're going to move forward in your life and the connection of people that you're with. So I'm not a big fan of it. Give them one time to transfer and then move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that bond, I think, if you're going to meet the top level people from that university historically, and you'll have that for life. 40 years is a long time. And you have to look at your future, I would say. Now, as far as the NIL, most of the coaches and administrators, they discuss capping that number. My argument would be, are you going to cap the players? I would like to cap the coaches as well, because that's a big variable in the equation of winning. And you're trying to make things equal. I know that they always say that the team with the most resources, they're going to be dominant, but we haven't seen that lately. We've seen teams come out of nowhere, like Indiana in football. And we've seen teams in basketball do some good things as well. These mid-major programs reach the Final Four. So just because you have the resources, I don't think that guarantees success. It gives you an excellent opportunity, but you still have to pay the right people. But I would like to see, if you're going to cap the players, let's cap the coaches too. About a minute left, Richard. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind that. I definitely think that there should be a correction in some regard. Now, I would say I do think that the coaches have significantly more value when it comes to the impact on winning games. I think that the brands of the school matters more than the student athlete. I think that is a misconception. If you take the person out of the jersey, then I don't know how much good they are without the coaches in the school backing them. So I would like to see a little bit of correction in all of it. I think the focal point needs to be back on the education, but I would argue that the coaches are more so professionals in their craft than the players are, because if you look at the game, the players have a lot more to learn, and collegiate players should not be making more than professionals.
Mm-hmm. Richard, where can folks find you?
Well, you can always find me online on Twitter at rhendrix35 in social media. But you'll also just check out games on ESPN and the SEC network. You'll see me broadcasting a lot of games moving forward in the conference tournaments and in the NIT. So a lot of fun, but I'm always available.
Hey, Richard Hendrix, SEC basketball analyst, men's and women's extraordinaire. Thank you so much for being part of AP as we see it. And we'll be right back after these messages with another segment of AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm A.P. Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and we'd like to thank our guest, Richard Hendrix, the SEC men's and women's basketball analyst extraordinaire. We want to thank him for his comments, his suggestions, his observations, his thoughts. But anyway, we want to make mention of our sponsor, Greer's Markets, in business 110 years, serving the Gulf Coast, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, 29 locations. Remember, you're watching these basketball games with your family and friends. That's a winning tradition at Greer's, where you can score the big savings on the fresh meats, the produce, and more for all your game day spreads. Click on the Groceries to Go to have those delivered to your home, your office, your venue of choice. And you could always welcome your family and friends, and you don't even you don't have to ask them to stop by the store for you. The Groceries to Go you can complete your order online. That's a great thing. The coloring contest for the children, they're going to have the winner on March 28th, so you can drop by and have all the coloring things that you need to compete in the contest. All the holidays, you can observe those by going to Greer's and buying all your groceries. The holidays, the anniversaries, the birthdays, the special occasions, Lucy's famous recipes online in her book as well. And to check the online weekly ads that have all the specials for you. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. So we're just going to move on now with the show. And I wanted to bring up something about a rule change with the transfer portal. There's only one window, that's in January for football. So when there used to be two, you had that quarterback battle in the spring normally, and one quarterback would end up transferring. But I think it's an opportunity for a head coach with some courage and some initiative to use that quarterback position in the new rule, with keeping both quarterbacks on campus for the duration of the season. And the example that I'm going to use is Alabama. They have two quarterbacks, Austin Mack, the redshirt junior, competing for the spot along with redshirt freshman Keelan Russell. Now, they're both very talented, but normally you're going to have to make the decision to start one. I say they're both on scholarship, and if they want to transfer, they're going to have to sit out because they have those penalties now. They're going to take away 5 scholarships. The coach is going to have to sit out 6 games and all the meetings. They're going to take 20% of the football revenue. I don't think there's any head coach in the world is going to try to touch a transfer that will try to use any type of loophole or a court injunction to see if they could transfer to another school. I think it's one and done in that transfer portal for that year, the one in January. So I think you have a chance to keep both quarterbacks, and the head coach can set the tone. And as the leader, if you're promoting this to your staff, your players, that you're going to be able to utilize 2 quarterbacks, I think it's beneficial for your team. Because if you have 2 quarterbacks that are very close in talent, and they could be both very good, and if one's always on the bench, you're never going to see or give that person an opportunity to succeed. And you could be having a Saturday ball game where the other quarterback is doing fine, but not playing exceptional. You put them in the second quarter, there's a spark. It helps your team. The other quarterback could come in and play if they have that mindset and that tone has been set through all your practices during the week. Because let's face it, both quarterbacks can practice with the first team. So would you lose a little rhythm? Possibly. But the coaches can tweak that, I think, and the players, like I said, if that's their that's been the new mindset for your team to use 2 quarterbacks, I think you can be very successful. Steve Spurrier, he'd pull quarterbacks just like he'd pull an offensive guard or any other position. I think if the head coach has that philosophy, then your team is going to be fine and perform to your expectations. And I think it's an extra benefit to have another quarterback that's getting ready during the week. There's that edge, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Now it's consciously trying to get ready week by week for the opponent, and you want to be your best self. So I think it's an advantage for a head coach that utilizes this transfer rule, that they're proposing these limitations where you can only transfer one time in January. So that means more than likely your quarterback is going to end up staying because they're not going to sit out. Because the example I gave at Alabama, these 2 players have already sat out most of the year, didn't get much playing time. So I don't think they want to sit out another year and not play the game of football. So I think that a school like Alabama and any of these other places, any other of these universities, colleges, schools around the country that have a couple of quarterbacks that are of equal talent, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to use you both on Saturday. So be ready. And if that'll bleed over to the team as well, if moving forward, you make that a top priority for your staff and the quarterback and the rest of the team, we're going to use 2 quarterbacks. So I don't know if that's going to happen. If some coach is going to have, as I say, the courage to make this move, because the trend has always been if you had 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterback. But I don't think that's really necessarily the case with some of these schools where they can bring in 2 top-level quarterbacks that are very close in talent. And I'd like to see what they can do every Saturday. You might hit the jackpot one Saturday where somebody gets really hot and the other quarterback is performing fine. I mean, not turning the ball over, but somebody's hot that day. So I'd like to see that happen for some college teams around the country, to take that step in coaching and like I say, show some initiative and some flair by using 2 quarterbacks when everybody the last, I don't know, couple of decades or whatever, they don't play the quarterbacks. And during the Wishbone era, they put quarterbacks in all the time, 1, 2, or 3 per game. It was normal and natural. But in this pro style of passing, they like to go with the hot hand. But I think you can use 2 quarterbacks. Okay, moving on to that, we wanted to speak of the Washington Summit. The first thing I want to say is there wasn't any current player that was among the people that were invited. So I would have liked to have some current football players in there, basketball, on that panel. But anyhow, a ruling that came down in 1961 was the Sports Broadcasting Act, and that gave all pro sports the exemption to have the one TV contract. We always speak about that on the show. Pete Rozelle became the commissioner. He got all the teams together to form one TV contract because it was individualized before he arrived as a commissioner. And so college, they had the ruling in 1984 where you can only be on a certain amount of times. In Oklahoma and Georgia, they challenged that ruling, and then consequently you have all these different contracts since 1984. The 1984 ruling was that they violated the Sherman Act because they were limiting the amount of appearances. It used to be like a 2-year window, maybe 6 times maximum. Of course, we know that's changed. Every game from every school is really on television now. But you'd like to see that one contract happen for college football. The SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, American Athletic Conference, all these other 10 conferences in Notre Dame and any independents, the UConn's one of the independents left along with Notre Dame, have that one TV contract to maximize their financial flow of money. But I think the Big Ten and the SEC, I think the SEC had a study I was reading that they said that it might actually decrease the financial value of the contract if they have to share the TV inventory with some of these other schools that aren't as well known. But I would say give it a try to have that one contract, and you could always change it and put in some clauses in there. But I think if the Congress moves to let the colleges have the one TV contract, it'll be a bonanza for all these schools and all these leagues. I just don't see the SEC, the Big Ten, walking away from the rest of the FBS schools. You hear that chatter, you hear those conversations, but I don't think the the congressional leaders of all the 50 states would go along with not having their schools as part of the college football top level competition. I think those are threats, and I would dare them to make that move, because I think their funding would be challenged by the Congress. We all know if you follow the money, that can sway the argument. And I just think that college football, if they can get Congress to come up with some legislation to help them out as far as getting one contract for the TV rights, they'd be much better off. And I think you could have some harmony, whereas now it's all divided, and it's divided by money and power. And I just think if you can get back to making this more of a sport that's regionalized, but yet it has that national component of everyone is involved. That was so much fun. I loved having the Pac-8, the Pac-10, the Pac-12, the Southwestern Conference, or the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, some of the independents. I think that was great for college football, where you looked across the country, there could have been a champion from any part of the country. But now that the money has been the defining variable for all this progress in the last couple of years, it's really, I think, put a damper on the sport. And but I think if they can get that one TV contract, it'll solve a lot of issues. It'll galvanize the sport, and it'll make it more than just a regional sport of some teams dominating. The SEC dominated for quite a while. Now you have the Big Ten with the last 3 championships. But I think something needs to be done along those lines. But I hope that this doesn't happen. The SEC, the Big Ten, and some of the other conferences think that they can pull away from all the 130 FBS level schools. I think the game of college football is at its best when all 50 states are involved who have teams on the FBS level. But anyway, that's our show for this week. We'd like to thank our guest, Richard Hendrix of the SEC Men's and Women's Basketball Analyst Extraordinaire. Our sponsors, Greer. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we'll be back next week for another episode of AP As We See It. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm A.P. Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.